Hello everyone. Have you ever wanted to just spread it? Democracy that is. It's no secret that the galaxy within Starsector is a dystopia, where humanity suffers under a handful of oppressive regimes who spend their days warring with each other. So today, I thought we'd create our own faction built upon democratic ideals and launch a war of liberation against the core worlds. Our goal will be to conquer enough planets to achieve the population victory within the Nexerelin mod. However, unfortunately for the galaxy, our path to democracy will be paved with blood. And let's just say, some sacrifices will have to be made. Before we could start spreading democracy, the first thing we were going to have to do was drag ourselves above the poverty line. Starting next to the Tritachio Corporation, I did have certain legal ways of making money, but today I felt like doing things differently. So I started by spending the few credits I had, buying a shepherd, and then accepting a survey mission from the pirates. Survey missions are arguably the easiest way to make money, as all you have to do is get to the location in one piece, and make sure you have enough fuel to get home. After running the sensor package and getting paid 50,000 credits, I salvaged the research station, giving us a handful of hull mods. However, I may have been a little optimistic about how much fuel I could salvage, because due to both my lack of crew and heavy machinery, we had a salvaging efficiency of just 5%. Recovering a grand total of 9 fuel, we didn't have enough to get home. This being a small skill issue on my part, I tried to get as close to the core worlds as possible, flying past the Luddic Path fleet who were trying to extort people out of their credits to fund a crusade against technology. And my dumbass, I just ran out of fuel. Uh-oh, wait a minute. No, oh no, 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 no. Oh no. Inside the system, we discovered a Luddic Path station. With it being in an asteroid belt, I was able to sneak in and purchase the much needed fuel to get home. Before we left, I took the time to visit the bar and spoke to a fine lady who wanted us to smuggle some goods into the core worlds. Not one to turn down easy money, I accepted the job. Smuggling the sewing kits past the local authorities, I spent our reward on more shepherds, alongside some heavy machinery and crew, so hopefully next time, I could sustain myself while I completed another batch of survey quests. The first quest was to analyze a derelict ship, which happened to be located within a graveyard. After running the sensor package, I got to work digging through all of the ships. We found a handful of combat vessels, a buffalo which had been carrying some heavy weapons, and finally, an Invictus. The Invictus being the heaviest warship in vanilla Starsector, with a grand total of 12 large weapon slots and 10,000 armor. It does, however, require a skeleton crew of around 4,000 men, and an upkeep cost we couldn't afford right now. So, I made an appropriate note of its location, and left to complete the rest of our quests. Our next stop was a Domain-era probe, where after scanning it, I used my armada of shepherds to bully the defending drones, and donated the fuel to a poor prospector, who like an idiot, had run out of fuel. I like to point out that I gave her the fuel for free, and because of our good deed, Karma rewarded us with a Shrike-class destroyer. I'll be completely honest with you, I think this ship kinda sucks, but since I got it for free, I felt it was only right I at least try and make it work. For now, I threw on a handful of random weapons from our inventory, notably a heavy blaster and a needler. This turned out to be a pretty good idea since we bumped into a random bounty. He wasn't rocking much of a fleet, so I took the fight where I was pleasantly surprised by the Shrike. Admittedly, I wasn't fighting the greatest of fleets, nor was I fighting the most intelligent group of pirates, as one of them decided to ram my shepherd and fire torpedoes at it at point-blank range. After the battle, I returned to the core worlds to offload the heavy weapons I'd found earlier. I then hired an officer called Wednesday or was it Thursday? Anyway, with our extra funds, it was time to put together a proper design for our Shrike. This translated to leaving the heavy blaster and needler on, placing on some breach SRM pods for a little armor penetration, and for hull mods, of course it was safety overrides, because I just can't help myself. Anyway, with the ship kitted out, I spent the rest of our money on purchasing another one, followed by a couple of wolves and a shade. The idea was to have a highly mobile fleet which could quickly burst down individual ships, then scurry away when the rest of their navy turned up. Moving on, it was time to move away from boring survey quests and into something a little more exciting. Speaking to a man called Hermes, he offered us a bounty on a pirate for 76,000 credits. The bounty just happened to be at the research station we salvaged at the start of the game, and my dumbass had completely forgotten about the Luddic Path base. As I flew past, I was chased down and persuaded to make a donation towards their crusade. Yeah, fuck you, buddy. I hope nothing bad happens to you in the future, you piece of shit. Once we arrived, I found the bounty and made short work of him, picking off his smaller ships one by one before me and Wednesday tag-teamed the mule. Since we had done such an amazing job, Hermes wanted to become our friend. Returning back to him, we were offered another one at the same location. But hey, at least he was going to pay us an additional 1,000 credits, and we would get to say hi to our favorite terror. Oh, I guess not. Judging by the derelict starliner, I'm going to assume he's dead. But you'll be happy to know, in honor of our lost friend who definitely didn't mug us, I recovered his ship so his spirit would live on. Before we go any further, a quick word from today's sponsor. Have you ever found yourself browsing the internet without a VPN at home, or worse, while connected to public Wi-Fi? Opening the floodgates to all kinds of prying eyes interested in tracking your browser history or stealing your personal information. Thankfully, today's sponsor, ExpressVPN, allows you to encrypt your traffic and protect yourself from those pesky fellas who are trying to steal your logins and financial details. But why ExpressVPN, you may ask? Well, because it's quick, doesn't log any of your activity, and is incredibly simple to use. It's literally as easy as opening it, selecting your desired location, and then pressing go. Personally, I use ExpressVPN on my phone, so I can connect to the Wi-Fi at my local cafe and sip on a vanilla latte knowing that I'm protected from all kinds of cyber criminals with their rapid fingers and supercomputers who are trying to steal my personal data. Also, ExpressVPN allows you to access thousands of new shows across platforms like Netflix or Disney+, as many of these platforms have different TV shows and movies in each country. But with 105 countries to choose from, I'm sure you'll be able to find something to watch. So what are you waiting for? Get protected with ExpressVPN today. Find out how you can get 4 months extra for free by clicking the link in the description or by going to expressvpn.com/Rarr. And if you're feeling really lazy, you can also scan the QR code on screen. Thank you again to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. Now back to it. Jumping forward a few months, while I was out on another bounty, I came across a small cryovolcanic world and was asked to return a data core to the Glacier Academy. They were going to pay me a handful of credits for the trouble, so I accepted. During a survey of the planet, we found it had some widespread ruins, which upon exploring gave us a huge stockpile of drugs. Drugs which I sold to the pirates, who in return ambushed me outside my abandoned station I'd been using as a home. The fight that followed was incredibly painful, as I quickly discovered my fleet lacked any real form of point defense, which meant nothing is more terrifying than a Condor armed with salamander missiles. After this bastard fired 10 missiles at me, he then sent in the broadswords to try and finish the job. Surviving that ordeal, I managed to kill a few of their ships and reach their carriers. After killing them, we were left with a slightly nerve-wracking 38 hull points, and spent the rest of the fight desperately fending off the remaining interceptors while trying to escape. After winning the battle, it was obvious I had to solve my point defense issue, so I purchased my own carrier called a Drover. I gave it 2 sets of broadsword fighters and 4 Swarmer SRM missiles on the front. Throwing it into a simulation, the Swarmer missiles with the assistance of an ECM package did a pretty good job at dealing with the hordes of interceptors the pirates like to throw at you. And overall, I was impressed with what I had created. Anyway, the following month, Cornelius from the Glacier Academy contacted us, promising vast fortunes in return for our services. However, we were going to need significantly more firepower if we were going to head into the Abyss, so I purchased an Enforcer. I know it doesn't really fit with my fleet, but this ship has always had a special place in my heart, as I always enjoy fitting it with torpedoes and absolutely devastating the poor bastard who happens to be in front of me. This would come in handy as the pirates were now spawning in with cruisers, which I was going to need for our impending trip. Thankfully, the Tritachyon Corporation was suffering from pirate activity and had put out a system bounty. This was a good opportunity to make a little money, recover some of those cruisers I was talking about, but more importantly, stop them from being hostile with me. Yeah, that's right. I didn't even notice that I was hostile with them at the start of the game. Anyway, after killing a couple of fleets, our relations had improved to a point where they wouldn't shoot me on sight. But more importantly, I had farmed my first Eradicator. Rushing back to the station, I built my usual design, which consists of 2 chain guns, a handful of machine guns, and hammers on the front. For hull mods, I went with safety overrides and insulated engine assembly. With a fleet that wasn't looking too bad, I fancied clearing out a few remnant systems that were dotted around the core worlds, mostly to see if I could find a utopia for my democracy and to bully some remnants so I could feel like a big strong man. During this time, I salvaged a nice collection of AI cores, industrial upgrades, and found a few potential candidates for our home. While in hyperspace, I may have run out of credits and stopped paying our crew, which one officer took personally, and during a battle, I think tried to facilitate some kind of mutiny as she tried to get me killed. Then, to make things worse, my dumbass ran out of fuel again. This time, instead of being pulled into a terrorist cell, I was pulled into a high danger system, where I spent the next few days desperately running for my life while trying to salvage anything I could find. Luckily, I found a ship graveyard which had a nice collection of high-tech ships, one of those ships being a Paragon. Now, I couldn't quite bring myself to break down a Paragon for fuel, as it would make a fine addition to my fleet when it came to the Liberation Wars. So for now, I just left it alone. With the fuel I had scavenged, I could just about make it to a pirate base, where I purchased the rest I needed to get home. With another successful expedition under our belt, I felt confident in my ability as a captain, believed it was time to take Cornelius up on his offer of vast wealth. To run through it quickly, we went to the first location and ran the sensor package, which spat out some coordinates inside the abyss. Once we arrived, we found the Onslaught Mark I, defeated the threat, and then ran out of fuel trying to get home. No! With the quest completed, I decided to have a little respec on my skills, because it was quite obvious I was missing having the massive upkeep reduction you get from the industry line. After spending the next hour farming bounties for cruisers, I thought we were ready to settle our utopia. In fact, I had found the perfect planet while looking for an alpha core for my onslaught, a class 5 Terran world with rich farmlands and adequate resources. There was a slight issue with this system, and that being that the only other planet was a class 3 desert world. But as this was the only Terran world I had found, this system would have to do. Before I colonized the planet, for the first time ever on this channel, I went back and recovered the Paragon. With 2 capitals under our belt, the only thing left to do was colonize the planet and give it an appropriate name, like Super Birmingham. I don't know, I'd been playing a lot of Helldivers in between this recording. Since there isn't technically a way to be democratic, we were just gonna have to pretend by calling ourselves the Democratic League, and messing around with our diplomatic profile. With my colony being so small, the only faction we had to deal with was the pirates, but we solved that problem with a donation of a spare dealmaker to their queen. With her protection and no other colonial threats, I colonized the desert world and called it the very creative name of Very Hot. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with this planet, as it had no natural resources, no farming capacity, but hey, at least we had another planet. All we had to do now was wait for our colonies to grow. So in the meantime, I recovered a technology stash a scientist told us about, which not only gave us an alpha core, but the blueprints to make our own Paragons, Afflictors, and Phantoms. I also headed south and took the fight to some remnants inside a high danger system. Initially, I did this to farm some more AI cores, but after surveying a few of the planets, I came across a class 5 volcanic world. Now, I don't think I've ever seen a class 5 volcanic world. In fact, I didn't even realize you could have a class 5 volcanic world. I guess with a hazard rating of only 200%, and being ultra rich in both ores and rare ores, that will do it. It should be to no one's surprise then that I wanted this planet. However, because it was located in a high danger system, meant we were going to have to deal with the Remnant Nexus. So it was time to bring out the old Paragon from storage. But I had a small problem. I didn't have the guns for it. So I was off to Tritachyon to purchase some weapons. While there, I sold a handful of AI cores and spoke to Zunya about selling some data. Okay, with over 2 million in the bank thanks to Zunya's kind donation, I kitted out the Paragon and headed over to the Remnant Nexus. The battle that followed wasn't too exciting since I fought the station by itself. With the station dead, all I had to do was wait for their fleets to despawn, then I could move in and colonize the planet. I know it might sound a little obvious, but the first thing I did was build some mining. In fact, at this point, I went on a bit of a building spree, constructing some heavy industry on our desert planet and a battle station on our capital. Shortly after leveling up, to commemorate this moment, I fully embraced the Helldiver meme and changed the planet's name to Super Earth. I then built some light industry since the planet had developed a Luddite majority, which gave us a handful of buffs at the cost of having the Luddic Church prowling around our system. This run, I had decided we were going to have a zero tolerance policy for lurkers, because I was so fed up of getting extorted for supplies by everyone in my previous games. Now, getting mugged is one thing. However, the commerce raiders from Tritech are generally a pain in the ass, as they actively disrupt your trade routes, costing you precious ducats. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we found the first faction in need of some democracy. The trade war with Tritech is pretty much a contest to see who can be the bigger c***. They start by sending commerce raiders, and I respond by bombing one of their planets. In response, they sent a bounty hunter to kill me, so I bombed another one of their planets and then blockaded it. After I destroyed a handful of their trade fleets, did they finally admit I was the bigger c***. With the Megacorp back in its box, I had to rush home as a new crisis was upon us. The Luddic Church, which was envious of our utopia, decided they were going to try and conquer it. Sending a total of 5 fleets, I picked a couple of the smaller ones off in hyperspace, before fighting the main armada behind our battle fortress. With their armada dead, the oppressive church had been defeated. This doubled the effect of our Luddite majority, and pushed our planet's earnings to just under 250,000 credits a month, as it had become the biggest producer of food, domestic goods, luxury goods, and drugs. With profits soaring, I expanded our empire to a desert planet in a neighboring system and wanted a barren world for some more heavy industry. But it wasn't long until we were once again faced with a crisis. The Persian League was going to blockade us. Now, this was going to be a serious problem, as the blockade consisted of 16 fleets. To defeat it, we were either going to have to kill the Grand Armada or destroy both the supply fleets. Fighting the League is a real pain in the ass, as they tend to spam missiles and fighter wings, which is still kind of a counter to my fleet. To solve this issue, I built a converted hangar into all my eradicators and gave them each a set of interceptors. Plus, I built an Anubis, placed 2 Paladin point defense weapons on it, and laughed as the League's firepower melted in front of me. That is the saddest Pegasus I've ever seen in my life. After killing a single detachment by accident, we alerted the Horde and were attacked by a handful of their fleets. After a frustratingly long battle where I roamed the battlefield in a Paragon sniping their ships, I eventually won and used this opportunity to rush down their supply fleets. With both the supply fleets dead, we'd gained a small buff for our troubles, but more importantly, democracy had prevailed. With my confidence at an all-time high, it was finally time to make preparations for the liberation of the core worlds. Currently, we were sat in last place with 27 population. Far from the required 139 we needed to secure our victory. While I was still preparing my fleet for war, the Syndrian Dictat declared a surprise war against me. Little did they know, that was all the motivation I needed to actually get on with it. Since they were allied with the League and Tritech, I was now at war with the majority of the galaxy. But that was okay, because invading the Syndrians is usually a horrible experience, as you have to grind through the millions of fleets they have lurking in their system. So I opted to invade the League instead, starting with a couple of planets in the north so we had a stepping stone into the core worlds. After I had successfully invaded both planets, I spent the next few days fending off counter invasions and stabilizing them by throwing heavy weapons at the governors. While waiting for the rebellions to die down, I took this opportunity to raid a few of the League's planets to soften them up for later invasions. Yes, this does mean the planets are going to be absolutely battered, but having zero stability made our invasion significantly easier. Now, with 5 planets liberated, this brought us up to the second highest population in the galaxy. To achieve our victory, we still required around 80 population, which left me at a crossroads. I could either sign ceasefires with the Sunrise Coalition and invade the Hedge, or continue our war against the trio of factions. Since the Hedge had pretty much left me alone this entire game while all the other factions had actively tried to fuck me, the choice was fairly simple. So after a brief ceasefire, I put together a Grand Armada and invaded the League's capital. After liberating the few planets that remained in the south, this left the remnants of the oppressive oligarchy on Salamanca, which was quickly invaded by the Hedge. With the League destroyed, our next target was the dictatorship of the Syndrian Dictat, who looked like they were having a pretty terrible time, given that 2 of their planets had already been invaded. But despite this, they still made time to try and drop a saturation bombardment on one of my planets. Wasting no time, I threw the kitchen sink at Syndria while I invaded Volta. Within a month, not only had their bombardment been cancelled, but we had also dismantled their entire dictatorship. This left just 3 factions in the galaxy. With the Hedge currently at war with Tritech, I took the opportunity to destroy the Church, since they were for some reason not allied with anyone. With the Church liberated under our banner, we had a total population of 158, but for some reason, the amount required had gone up to 178. Fuck's sake. Feeling a little burnt out from invading planets, I was left with two choices. Either align myself with the hedge and live side by side with a military dictatorship, or murder millions by nuking entire planets to bring the population threshold down. And would you look at that? 13 genocides later, and we'd won. With the core worlds liberated, democracy had prevailed. Don't worry about the 269,000 orphans we'd made and the 13 planets that mysteriously died. We had become the dominant faction in the galaxy. Anyway, with that, fellas, I think we were done here. As always, I want to say a massive thank you to the people who throw money at me. If you enjoyed, please leave a like. And finally, thank you to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. And as always, new videos every week.